Hi, friends. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We're the podcast that brings you historical disasters, life lessons, interesting stories from our human past, and we are trying to figure out what's next for us, how we grow, how we talk, what stories we're telling, and all of that. But our first episode of 2025 was released on January 6th, and it is about the polio vaccine. So I talked a little bit about the history of polio. I talked about, obviously, our dear FDR and our dear Eleanor, and I also talked about the vaccine. And when thinking about the polio vaccine, I remembered that my dad, Mark, remembers getting the polio vaccine. He got the Sabin oral vaccine in a sugar cube, and he remembers standing in line and getting it. So I thought, why not ask him about it? So, I hope you enjoy this short interview that I did with my dad, Mark Stierek, about polio, growing up in a time when vaccines were new, and we also touch on my great aunt, so my grandma's sister, who passed away when she was 2 years old from measles, which is now a disease, obviously, that we can vaccinate against. And I always think about how my great grandma told me that she thought about her every day, obviously, for, 70 years. Every day she thought about this daughter that she had lost to a disease that we are so lucky now to be able to vaccinate against. So I wanted to share those stories and maybe we'll do more. Definitely a note to talk to your parents and grandparents and get their stories because it's fun to talk about it, record it, and be able to share it with the next generation. So love you, Dad. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone enjoys this short interview.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Cool. Hi, Dad. How are you?
I'm doing well here in Florida.
Good. I am about to record my show on polio, and I wanted to
Okay.
talk to you because I know you remember
hmm
getting the vaccine. But first, just love to hear where you grew up, when you were born.
Sure. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, at Evangelical Hospital. Doesn't exist anymore. On July 21st, 1953. I grew up in North Riverside. It's the western suburb of Chicago. It goes Chicago, Cicero, Berwyn, North Riverside. So the third small suburb out west of the city limits of Chicago. That's where I grew up.
Cool. And it's obviously like post-war era.
Right.
Everyone's dad, like a veteran.
Everyone's dad was a veteran. Actually, I remember my dad would, when he would meet another dad, they would say, "What were you in the service?"
Yeah.
And the guy would say, "I was in the Navy," and my father was in the Marines. They all were in the service, or yes, they all were.
Yeah. Totally.
Mhm. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite childhood memories of like just being a kid in the 50s and 60s?
Well, we were free to go wherever we wanted. Totally different than today. You'd hop on your bike, go down to the baseball field and literally play all day. And they had a pump there where you could pump well water when you got thirsty, and that was summertime, and everybody went there. And then in the wintertime, they had the Salt Creek went near where I lived, and it was flooding all the time. So they built a corridor underground from Salt Creek to the Des Plaines River to level the water off. And they left a huge mountain of dirt where everybody
Hmm.
would go tobogganing during
Oh,
the
fun.
wintertime. Yeah. And in those
Hmm.
days we had snow. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. In the before days. One thing that I learned about in researching the polio is about how like America was in like not in the 50s, but before that, like getting people to be clean, to be like, take a shower. It just like wasn't a thing that people did. And a lot of it was marketing. So there was like, use Listerine for the first time and like brush your teeth and things like that. And one thing that came up that I know you remember is the trucks of DDT.
Yes.
Remember
Yes, I
that?
did. I do remember it very well. And the crazy thing was the truck with DDT would go down the street, and our parents let us ride our bikes in the fog.
That's so funny.
Isn't it crazy? Now
Yeah.
you'd be, as everybody would be locking the windows and the doors. And in those days, it was like, hey, great. We didn't think of DDT. We thought it was the mosquito truck, we call it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you'd hide in the smog. It'd be like a movie, and it was but we did.
Did it did it stop the mosquitoes? Did it work?
I think the only way to stop mosquitoes is when the truck hit an actual mosquito. That was about it.
That's fair.
Uh,
That's fair. Um, Amazing. Uh, okay, so about the polio vaccine in particular, I'd love to hear just like what do you remember about polio? Was it something that you thought about or like people were thinking about? Was it a big
to
deal?
be honest with you, after you mentioned this to me a few weeks ago, I did have one. No, I never knew anybody who had it.
Hmm.
Now my our next door neighbors, my parents' next door neighbor were Marie and George. They were in their 70s at in you know in the 50s. They passed away a long time ago. They had a son who was alive, and she had a son also. She had two sons, but one died of polio.
Hmm.
And she said that she went to the hospital and the bedding was rolled up and everything was rolled up, and then she got the news that her son had died.
Oh,
A few months later, she goes to the hospital to see her other son who was ill. She noticed the bedding roll up, and she thought, "I've lost both sons." He survived. The second one survived.
oh, good. That's terrible to.
Yeah, and she was they ended up with one grown man. It was their son,
Hmm.
uh, and so that was really the only person I knew. But I remember that, and that's just how she told it. She said, "I when I saw Georgie was the son who survived. When I saw Georgie's bedding roll, I thought he had passed away too. It was,
Oh,
but he did not. So that was it."
that's good. That's good. That's crazy. Did it when do you remember? So tell me about when you got the vaccine. How old were you, and were you like expecting it? Because it reminds me a tiny bit of, I mean, COVID was obviously a very different disease and affected a lot more people. But, when we got the COVID vaccine, like I cried in relief, like as a mom, as a parent. I was so happy that we were able to do this. And I'm curious as to like if you were expecting it or were you just like, oh, one day we're gonna go down and get it.
Yeah, I think it's one day we're gonna go down and get it. I don't think it was. I don't remember it being like a relief to my parents or anything
Hmm.
like that. No, it was extremely simple. We would get in line. If somebody is listening now and they know the area, North Riverside, Des Plaines Avenue goes right through North Riverside, and on the west side of Des Plaines right now is the North Riverside Library. That was the city hall at that when
Hmm.
I was a kid. So we all lined up in front of the city hall, and they had a doctor and a nurse there and a notebook, and they would give you a sugar cube with the vaccine in it, and
Hmm.
you would. I think my mom had to bring birth certificates. I think she did,
Hmm.
and we would. They fill out the form or fill out put us in the notebook, and because it was sugar, kids went for it. You didn't get a shot or anything. It was very simple, very
Hmm.
quick. But the line was forever because every kid did it. I think you had
Yeah,
to do it to go to school.
maybe.
Maybe.
I think
Yeah,
you do now. Yeah.
yeah. And then my brother, it was probably, I would say maybe 1950.
Hmm.
60, I mean, excuse me,
Hmm.
60. I was maybe 6 or 7 years old at the time, and my brother would have been 2 or 3. And we both got it, and then we had to do it again.
Hmm.
It was a two vaccine system. And
Hmm.
we did it twice, and I never knew anyone who got polio.
Amazing.
Amazing is right.
Hmm. Hmm. That's super cool. Um, yeah, that's fun. I feel like everybody in that line with you probably remembers doing it,
Probably does. It
as like
was
a
a
day.
it was kind of an event, and
Yeah.
it was because it wasn't an actual shot. It was
Hmm.
painless, and yeah. And I remember we were all lined up and did it. Yeah, and there was nothing to it.
Yeah. Cool.
And the best part is it worked.
Yeah. No, the best part's it worked. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
So that would have been 60, well over 60 years ago,
Yeah.
because I'll be 72 in July, and probably 65 years ago,
Hmm. Hmm.
I would think.
Cool. It's very fun. It's
Yeah.
wild. The
So
public health things are so crazy. Like
they are.
everyone has to do it at the same time.
They are. They are.
Yeah.
They are. And like I say, uh, I'm sure that we had to have that in order to go to school, and
Hmm.
you probably do now, I would think.
Yeah, I think you do too. I think you do too. I'm gonna check, but I'm pretty sure that you do.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, And the other thing that I know we didn't talk to your Uncle Al about, but I know that my grandma's sister died of a disease that is a vaccinated disease now.
Yeah, I think it was measles,
Yeah, I think so too.
but I'll
A
have
little
to
girl.
check with him. And she was two.
Oh,
And my grandmother, your great grandmother, said that she held her when she died, and you were just would die from measles.
that's awful.
And she said she held her, and her name was Gloria. And said Gloria smiled, and then she just passed away.
Oh, it's so sad.
Yeah, and that would have been a long time ago. That would have been I
That
don't
may
know.
be like 100 years ago.
Yeah, because my mom was born in 30, so my mom would be 93, and it was her older sister. So it was maybe 85, 90 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Super.
But that's yeah, I remember that. I remember that story from Grandma also. Yeah.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you telling me that memory. That's really cool. I'm
Oh,
totally
you're
kidding.
welcome. I remember it very well, and
Yeah.
it was the way it was in those days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
That's the way it was.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, Dad. Love you.
You're
Don't hang
you're
up. I'm just
welcome.
gonna
I
stop
love you
recording.
too.
Okay.
All right. Bye bye.